The soils in the Western catchment are fairly hard capped. Studies have shown that about 70% of all rainfall just runs off these soils. So water infiltration is pretty low, and as a result ground cover is pretty low in some spots.
It'd be great to go back and see what it was really like, but from reading explorers journals and other bits and pieces, you know, C.W. Bean's book on the wool track, you can get an idea that this country wasn't dominated by INS and bare ground. It was covered with native perennials. It had good cover. They talk about losing kids in the grass. There was that much grass. It was up to the waists of horses. The horses used to sink to their feet blocks in the soil. It was that soft and spongy. You ride around now, you've got to try and drive a crowbar into it.
The main types of erosion that occur in the Western catchment are sheet erosion, where just layers of soil are just washed down the slope. You have gully erosion, where water's concentrated and eats out a gully. And then you have scalds, which are typically called clay pans, where the topsoil has been blown away over time. Where we find sheet erosion, that's typically on the slopes, the gentle slopes that you find. And to treat that, we generally look at contour furrowing, where there's a series of banks surveyed on the contour and built on the contour to slow down the water and just improve the water infiltration. Where you find gully or rill erosion, we use water spreading banks there, and water spreading banks take the water out of that gully and spread it over the country over a front of a couple hundred metres, and that also slows the water down, increases water infiltration, improves ground cover. So where you have clay pans or scalds, we build water ponds on those, and those banks just keep the water on the clay pan long enough to increase the germination of annual species, and then that progresses to more perennial species, and the clay pan eventually becomes reclaimed and grows really good ground cover.
Water spreading for us on Dijo has enabled us to see the results of when the water, instead of rushing across the paddocks, it's slowed down and spreads out, and it's allowing the natural grasses to come back on. We've seen that it has also the woody weed effect. If we can keep on top of that, I think the native grasses will actually choke it out, but without the water spreading banks there, we wouldn't have the natural grasses coming back, and that's what we've achieved.
Before the water spreading banks were put in, it was very scoured out country. We'd cleared it and cultivated it, and I was very worried about how to get the native grasses back on it, and the CMA, they sort of come up with trying these water spreading banks, so I'm very happy with it, yeah.
Another cause of erosion out here are fence lines, tracks, roads, and that happens when the natural water flow is diverted because of windrows, or just the track is below ground level, and it concentrates the water, and the water gushes down these tracks or fence lines and just eats it out, and it causes gullies. To lessen the impact of this type of erosion, it's important to minimise windrows, but also to help reinstate the natural water flow, we put banks across the tracks, fences. So when putting these banks across tracks and fence lines, they can have large approaches, so traffic doesn't have to slow down too much, and you can build the fence over these banks. Yeah, all these rehabilitation works, they need careful surveying and marking out on the ground. You just can't pick the fall of the land with your eye, and we're working in tolerances of a few centimetres over 100 metres, and if you don't get it right, you can cause a disaster. You can actually create gullies, and that's happened in the past. So it's very important to survey properly and construct and build these banks correctly as well, to the right dimensions. With all the rehabilitation techniques, the idea is that you're rehydrating the landscape. The erosion features just drain the landscape away, and the water just doesn't stay on the land long enough to do what it's supposed to do, and that's grow ground cover.
We had a a fall of about 25 mil and that would rained over the house, instead of guttering and washing away all the topsoil and everything with it, with the volume of water that's coming down, the water spreading banks have slowed that pressure, and it will trickle across the road for all of that day, and it's not just gone, it's not just disappeared, and instead of going down a narrow water line, it's actually spreading out to twice to maybe 4 or 5 times its width.
Yeah, well, a lot of our native grasses have come back that I didn't think had ever come back on this country.
It is a dual outcome. It's a win-win situation where the landholders definitely have a productivity gain, but there's also the biodiversity improvements of just ground cover. There's the perennial ground covers, and then there's the shrub species that come back.
It's not stopping it, it's not banking it up, it's just slowing it down.